So last year, Sony released their XG500, which was their first large portable Bluetooth speaker, and it was their response to the JBL Boombox. And they also gave us a sneak peek of their upcoming design language for their new portable Bluetooth speakers. But now, as of mid-2022, Sony has released the rest of their speakers, the XG300, XE300, and the XE200. So today, we're going to break down Sony's current speaker lineup as of mid-2022. Regarding pricing, the XG500 currently has a retail price of $500, but it likes to go on sale for $400. The XG300 has a retail price of $350, but likes to go on sale for $300. The XE300 has a retail price of $200, but likes to go on sale for $170. And the XE200 has a retail price of $130, but it likes to go on sale for $110. Now, long story short, both the XG500 and XG300 could be good options to consider depending on your needs. But for me, both the XE300 and XE200 are hard passes. Nonetheless, if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below, or you can press on the YouTube shopping button. Just give it a try. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about the design of these speakers. Now the XG500 is the largest speaker here, but it's still fairly portable. It weighs in at 12 pounds and it has a built-in carrying handle. The only thing that I don't like about this speaker is that since it's just a cylinder, the XG500 loves to roll around in the trunk of your car if you've got it back there. But then there's the XG300 and it's just a smaller version of the XG500. This guy weighs in at 6.6 pounds and it also has a built-in carrying handle. And just like the XG500, it loves to roll around in the trunk of your car. So if you're going to take either of these two speakers on the go with you, you're gonna have to buckle them down. But then there's the XE300 and XE200. Now, these things have a very different and angular design to them. Now, yes, they are smaller than the XG300, but the XE300 and XE200 are pretty big for their respective product categories. The XE300 is noticeably larger than the JBL Charge 5, and the XE200 is noticeably larger than the JBL Flip 6. Now, regarding durability, all of these speakers are water and dust resistant, so if they get splashed on or rained on, that isn't going to be a problem. However, with both the XG500 and XG300, you do have to be mindful about their exposed passive radiators. Whereas with these smaller speakers, their passive radiators are covered. However, since these speakers have a mostly silicone wrapped body, they can be a scratch magnet. Whereas since both the XG500 and XG300 have mostly fabric wrap bodies, I feel that they're going to have an easier time standing up to constant abuse from bumps and scrapes. But next up, let's address the light features on these speakers. Now both the XG500 and XG300 have a built-in light feature. But these light features are tucked into the passive radiators, and personally, I don't even think that it's worth using these light features because they're so hidden. Plus, you can't even see them during the day. And with both the XG300 and XE200, they don't have a light feature. And I do have to point out that over the years, Sony has been removing the light feature from their speakers, because the XB22 and its predecessors all had a light feature, and the XB33 and beyond all had a light feature as well. And to be straight up, the light feature on the XG300 is a straight up downgrade from its predecessor, the XB43. So overall, what I'm getting at here is it looks like Sony is moving away from the light features on their speakers, and if you do get the XG300 or XG500, I recommend that you don't even use their light features and instead just enjoy the battery savings. Because when it comes to battery life, this is an area where both the XG500 and XG300 do pretty good. Now, with the XG500, it has an advertised battery life of 30 hours, but that's with the speaker playing at 40% volume, which is a decent listening volume, but that's with its light feature turned off, which is okay with me. But that's also with the mega bass feature turned on, which is good. And real-world use with the speaker playing at 80% volume is good for about 10 hours of playback time. And then there's the XG300, which has an advertised battery life of 25 hours. And that's with this speaker playing at 50% volume, which is an okay listening volume as well. And that's with the light feature turned off, which again, that's okay with me. But that's with the mega bass feature turned on, which is good. But real-world use with the speaker playing at 80% volume, the speaker's good for about 11 hours of playback time. However, since the speaker does have a warmer sound signature to it, I do expect most people to use the XG300 at a higher volume, thus draining its battery life faster. But then there's the XE300 and XE200. Now the XE300 has an advertised battery life of 24 hours, which seems very impressive, and the XE200 has an advertised battery life of 16 hours, which also seems very impressive. But these advertised battery lives is with both of these speakers playing at 50% volume, which is rather quiet for both of these speakers, and that's while both of these speakers are using their stamina mode, which is going to severely reduce the bass on both of these speakers, making them barely worth using. But with their stock EQs, which is how you should use these speakers, the XE300 has an advertised battery life of 14 hours and the XE200 has an advertised battery life of 10 hours. But again, that's while these speakers are playing at 50% volume, which is rather quiet. But real-world use with both of these speakers playing at 80% volume, the XE300 is good for about 7 hours of playback time and the XE200 is good for about 5 hours of playback time. But again, since both of these speakers do have a warmer sound signature to them, and since they are on the quieter side, I do expect most people to use both of these speakers at a higher volume, thus draining their battery lives faster. Now, when it comes to connectivity, all of these speakers can be connected to two devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJ. And when it comes to audio codecs, all of these speakers have support for SBC, AAC, and LDAC, which is Sony's own in-house high-res audio codec. Now, whether you're an iPhone or an Android user, AAC is going to work perfectly fine. However, if you do want to take advantage of LDAC, you do have to be an Android user, and if you do decide to use LDAC, that is going to take an additional toll on the battery life. But if you want to, you can always just use a wired connection with either the XG500 or XG300 because they both still have 3.5mm audio jacks. Whereas with both the XE300 and XE200, you can only use these speakers wirelessly because they don't have audio jacks. Now, even though the XG300, XE300, and XE200 all have USB-C ports, their USB-C ports are strictly used for charging. You can't use the USB-C ports on these speakers as a wired connection like you can with some other speakers out there. However, something that is exclusive to the XG500 is that it does have a 1/4-inch input, so you can plug in a microphone or a guitar. And the XG500 also has a pair of USB-A ports, and you can even play music off of one of these USB-A ports off of a USB stick. Now, the XG300 also has a USB-A port, but this USB-A port is strictly used for charging your phone. And personally, I feel that this USB-A port isn't going to get much use because most phones these days now just come included with USB-C cables instead. But definitely with the XG500, its standout characteristic is that it has that 1/4-inch input, so if you want, you can plug in a microphone, and you can also play music off of a USB stick if you're into that. But now let's talk about actually listening to music with these speakers. Now, obviously, the larger the speaker, the louder and more bass that you're going to have. Now with the XE200, the speaker has dual front-mount firing woofers and dual passive radiators that shoot out its sides. Very standard for a small size speaker. Now the XE300 also has a dual front-mount firing woofer and dual passive radiator setup, except a little larger. But then there's the XG300, which has dual front-mount firing woofers, dual front-mount firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out its sides. And finally, there's the XG500, which also has dual front-mount firing woofers, dual front-mount firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out its sides, but again, it's a little bigger. But now we're going to jump into the sound test. All of these speakers are playing with their stock bass-heavy EQs, and all of these speakers are playing at max volume, except for the XG500, which is playing at 75% volume. So obviously, the larger the speaker, the louder and more bass you're going to have. Now in general, all of Sony speakers have a warmer sound signature to them, and both the XG300 and XG500 are a little quieter than their direct competitors, but they still do a decent job of keeping up. Neither the XG500 or XG300 leave you wanting more while they're playing at max volume. Whereas with both the XE300 and XE200, these two speakers have a hard time keeping up with their direct competitors, and they do leave you wanting more when they're playing at max volume. However, with both the XE300 and XE200, both of these speakers sound very shallow and muffled, something that isn't as big as a problem with either the XG300 or XG500. And that could be because these other two speakers have dedicated tweeters that focus on the highs, and it also could be because both of these speakers have exposed passive radiators. Now, with all of these speakers, you can go in and adjust their EQ. And with both the XE300 and XE200, you can go in and raise their mids and trebles so that they don't sound so shallow. But still, even with their mids and treble raised, they continue to have this muffledness to them, which just isn't present under the direct competitors, and it isn't as prominent as with either the XG300 or XG500. And circling back to max volume, like I mentioned already, the larger the speaker, the louder it's going to get. However, with all of these speakers, technically you do get a performance boost out of them when you use them while they're plugged in. Now, with the XE200, XE300, and XG300, their performance boosts are very minimal. I barely personally noticed the difference, but I did manage to record a difference. However, with the XG500, its performance boost is much more noticeable. So, if you want to get the most out of the XG500, you might want to use it while it's plugged in. But overall, when it comes to sound quality, both the XG500 and XG300 managed to get the job done, but they can fall a little behind their direct competitors. Whereas with both the XE300 and XE200, these are a hard pass for me because they're fairly quiet for their size, they sound rather muffled, and they struggle to keep up with their direct competitors. But now let's talk about Party Connect. Now, since all of these speakers are using Party Connect, you can pair any of these speakers to another XG500, XG300, XE300, XE200, and you can also pair up to Sony's older speakers like either an XB43, XB33, or an XB23. And you can pair up to 100 Sony speakers together, which is obviously just overkill and is just marketing. But also, with Sony's Party Connect, you can pair your smaller, more portable Bluetooth speakers to any of Sony's larger box speakers that are also using Party Connect, like either an XP700 or an XP500. The only thing that you want to keep in mind here is that you can only pair your Sony Party Connect speakers to other Party Connect speakers. You cannot pair any of Sony's Party Connect speakers to any of Sony's older speakers that are using wireless party chain. And also, if you want to get left and right stereo sound going, you have to have two of the exact same speakers, or else your speakers are only going to play in sync. Now, even though Sony's Party Connect is very accommodating and it gets the job done, it is not my favorite speaker pairing protocol out there because it can be a hassle to use. Now, first off, with the XG300, XE300, and XE200, if you want to get Party Connect going, you have to use the app. Unlike with the XG500, which still has a physical button, like all of Sony's speakers before. And having to use the app to get Party Connect going just isn't as streamlined as before. Now, also, sometimes it can take forever to get these groups paired up, and also sometimes not all of your speakers will get paired up when you're trying to connect them. So sometimes you will have to go through the pairing process multiple times. And sometimes echoes do form. Now, Sony's Party Connect does correct this echo after a while, but it's only a matter of time before that echo comes back. So, like I said, Party Connect is very accommodating and it gets the job done, but it is not my favorite speaker pairing protocol out there because it can be a hassle to use. Personally, I dread any time that I know that I have to pair my Sony speakers together to get B-roll with them, because I know it's going to be a hassle. But finally, here's the microphone test. Now, all of these speakers have built-in microphones except for the XG500. Now, right now, the XG300 is sitting on a tabletop about 5 feet away from me and facing directly at me. Now, overall, this microphone isn't awful, but I still wouldn't take phone calls with my speaker. But with all that being said, personally, I feel that Sony's current speaker lineup does leave a lot to be desired, and they struggle to keep up with their direct competitors. And personally, I still prefer the XB43, XB33, and XB23 lineup. Personally, for me, I feel that both the XE300 and XE200 are hard passes. From a performance standpoint, these speakers are too quiet and too muffled for their size. But then there's the XG300. Although it's not my favorite speaker out there, and I do feel that it's a downgrade from the XB43, it manages to get the job done, but I would only consider it if I'm getting a really good deal on it. And then there's the XG500. This speaker does a better job of keeping up with its direct competitors, and it has good battery life. But what really makes it stand out is its 1/4-inch input for mics and guitars, and you can play music off of a USB stick if you're into that in 2022. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.